Mike, and I hope you're well, and welcome to another episode of Creative Studio Live. And this week on this show, we will be talking about gear. How much of it do you really need? Actually, one of our favorite subjects. I'll turn my sound off. One of our favorite subjects as musicians is to talk about gear, of course. So we should be in heaven tonight because we're going to discuss it lots and lots and lots. And as ever, I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Mr. Pete Johns. I'll bring him up here. Say hi to everyone, Pete.
Hi to everyone, Pete. It's a pleasure to be here, Mike. Yes, we've all got gas. We all love our gear acquisition syndrome. So today we've got an absolute excuse to talk about our gear and what we need and what we don't need when it comes to gear. So I'm super.
I thought you were talking about flatulence for a moment when you said
well,
gas.
Yes, I'm talking about that. We're both middle-aged men, so I'm talking about that as well. But no, we are talking about acquiring gear for your home studio, of course.
We're off to a good start, I see. Just want to say hi to everyone in the audience. I can already see Vachi there from Recording Studio 9. I'm expecting lots of input from him tonight because he knows his stuff when it comes to this. So looking forward to that, Vachi, for you. And say hi if you're watching in the comments. Don't be a stranger. We're going to be trying to keep things really basic tonight, like really simple for new people who are just getting into recording and trying to be a bit tough on ourselves about what do you really need to record. And so I'm going to invite people in the audience, in the chat, to keep us honest and on that, and also to mention pieces of gear that they favor or have used, anything that they'd like to recommend. Feel free to do that, folks, and we'll try and say hi to you. Good day to Jade, who's just come in there as well. Now Pete, let me just ask you first of all. I know you're ever so busy. You're making a video every single day. I don't know how you do that. But what's it been like this week? I spied that you had been talking about some free plugins over the last week or so.
I've gone a little bit. I've taken a leaf out of your book, Mike, and I've gone plugin crazy. So audio unit plugins on iOS, and someone clued me into some great new free ones. And for some reason, as soon as you put free in front of something, everyone wants to know about it because who doesn't love a bargain, especially when it's $0 and €0 and British pounds. So yeah, free plugins have been what it's been all about. And yeah, it's really cool because you can do some cool things without actually spending any money. What about you? I noticed some cool things happening over on Creative Source.
Yes.
Great couple of videos.
I'll quickly go through that. I did do my desk building video about a week ago and had a wonderful response on that. So thank you to everyone for saying some nice things about that. And I made a cakewalk video about the console view this week, which went down quite well. So thanks to the people in the cakewalk community for that. But I will say that I did have a disaster and I had a hard drive go down. And even though I'm always I'm always preaching to people, hey, make sure you back things up. There was a few things I hadn't backed up on that hard drive. There was a lot I had, thankfully. But 2 terabytes of hard drive went down. It took me a few days just to reinstall a whole bunch of stuff because it had all of my contact libraries on there. So they were all backed up, but still took a while.
Now, I wasn't going to call you out on it, Mike, because I'm a classy guy. But if you're wondering why we were going to do this show last week and why we're doing it this week instead, I get a message from Mike about an hour before showtime saying, Houston, we have a problem. I have 2 terabytes of update to install and we won't be going live. So, but that's all right because we're here. We've got to be twice as prepared, right, Mike? Because we've had an extra week to prepare, surely.
I survived. That's the main thing. I mean, at first I was afraid. I was petrified, but I did survive. Anyway, let's get on with the show and let's start to talk about gear. Now we've got a little bit of a format here. We're going to start. We're going to go through some levels you might go through, and we're going to start right at the bottom. And what did I call this level, Pete? You had my notes as well on this.
Yeah, you call it level 1. I'd almost call it level 0, but I'll stick with your number.
This is sort of level 1, level 0. So this is your zero budget studio, meaning you really don't have any extra cash available to you right now, but you want to start recording. Now, should you go, no, I need to get an extra job, I need to save, I'll have to leave recording till later. Should you do that or should you get going with it now, Pete? What do you reckon?
You should actually start right now, because regardless of what you've got, you need to start creating. And this is, I advocate this all the time, and I say if you've got a PC, if you've got a Mac, you've got an iPhone, you've got an Android phone, I don't care what you got. You can start creating without anything. And we'll talk more gear later, but your built-in microphones, your onboard sound, your built-in virtual instruments. As people watch your channel know, Mike, you can use some free software and get some pretty amazing results.
Okay, so let's set some expectations here, though. It's conceivable that you could write a hit song on just nothing more than what you've already got, which is a phone or some sort of computer, whether it's a Mac, a PC, a laptop, desktop, whatever. It's conceivable to make music with no extra gear whatsoever. Now, I want to set some expectations, though. Yes, if it's electronic music, if you're not going to be really recording too much in the way of actual like a vocal or instruments, I know you might correct me here, because I think on GarageBand, just on the phone, you can do that, of course. So over on the PC side, I'm going to say, you could record some audio with just the built-in sound card on your PC, but it's going to be very, very limited. But if you were just creating, say, electronic music, you could survive for a very long time on that. Now, I'm going to start the ball rolling. I'm going to go over to you in a second. But in terms of actual hard recommendations, this is my sort of top tip, if you like. I'm not going to recommend Cakewalk for this, even though Cakewalk is fully featured DAW. But my feeling is it doesn't work very, very well at all on this sort of internal sound card on a PC or what have you. It works, but it's very, very limited. I wouldn't recommend it. I've actually found that Fruity Loops actually goes a lot better than Cakewalk. It has a really good sort of like audio engine of its own, which I found and you get heaps of stuff with it. It's not free. It's not free, though, I have to say that. But you get the trial, and you can play with it for ages and ages, the trial, and you'll get a good feeling about whether it's what you're into or not. So how about you over on your side of the fence there?
Yeah, so on my side of the fence, it's all about GarageBand, really. I know people are going to be so shocked to hear me say that, because I don't really talk about GarageBand much. But whether you're on a Mac, pretty much any Mac that you have, GarageBand's been around for 10 plus years. So there's a version of GarageBand that's going to work on your Mac. And like you said there, with Fruity Loops, with the FL Studio, GarageBand's great for both. So whether you've actually got an audio interface that you're plugging in, whether you're plugging it into your iPhone or your iPad, or whether you're plugging into your Mac, or if you've just got the built-in sound and you're using that because you got virtual instruments, you got a whole bunch of loops and samples and other things that you can use, then you can start creating without actually having any gear at all. And this is what I say to a lot of people. It's like, you got a Mac, you got an iPhone, an iPad, just start, just get going. And I know that you're an Android user as well. And are there any, I'm putting on the spot here, but are there any apps on the Android devices that you can get started with?
Funnily enough, I've only recently just started playing around with one, and that is BandLab. So this is the company who took ownership of the Cakewalk product. They were already existing. I'd belonged to BandLab for ages, but I'd never actually used their software on Android, and I gave it a quick run over the last few days. Quite a different concept to GarageBand. I found it's like loop-based stuff. It's really, really good. Actually, very entertaining, great fun. I mean, really great fun if you just want to develop ideas using some loops and things. So that's pretty good. Nice interface, very, very user-friendly. So I've enjoyed that. And Vachi in the comments is just talking about something called ASIO for all. It's really he's correct in this, in that you can download and install ASIO for all, and use that to run perhaps your internal audio engine or something like that. Can be quite useful, and there's obviously a number of other pieces of software available for people in the comments, which Vachi is mentioning there. So I just wanted to interject with a little story here.
Oh, I like stories.
You could get your violin out for this one.
So
when I came to Australia in 1997, I came to Australia with a bag of clothes, $100 and a guitar. I had nothing else. I had a little studio in the UK in the early days of recording on computer, and it was good fun. But post-divorce, and some people might identify with these kind of stories, I came away with very little. And I'd started gigging in Fremantle here, was doing quite well, playing some original songs, and was very, very fortunate to have some regular gigs playing original songs. And so I thought, it would be really helpful if I had a CD to be able to sell at the gigs so that people could become more familiar with my material, which I decided to do, but I had nothing. I had not much money. And so I borrowed a PC off of a friend. And I installed Cakewalk. This is 22 years ago.
Cakewalk, yes.
Yeah, and I bought one of those stick microphones. You would get them now in Officeworks or in Office Supplies, and they'd sit on your desk, and they sit up on really, really poor quality. I think I paid $15 for it, and even back then that was cheap, right? Anyway, and I recorded a whole album. I didn't have an audio interface. I just used what was on the computer, and I recorded a whole album with there was already some virtual instruments around at that time, drums and what have you. Did that with acoustic guitar and some vocals, harmonies, all that stuff, and sold quite a few hundred copies of that CD over the next sort of couple of years at gigs. So that's my little story to say, look, if you've got to just use what you've got at your disposal, get on and do it. I was really glad that I did it. I learned heaps in the process. I'm not going to say that it was the tip-top audio quality, but it was enough to allow people to hear my songs and to become familiar with them. So there you go. There's my little story of encouragement to people should you have no money.
Yes, exactly, and I love that, and I've had heaps of stories exactly the same. Buddy Matt, who's on a lot of the groups and the forums that we're part of, the GarageBand Users Forum. He started recording doing exactly that. He grabbed a guitar, he grabbed his iPhone, he used the built-in microphone, he just started jamming and recorded his vocals, and he released his first single. Like about 6 months ago, he released a single, and now he's released another single.
Love it.
Like, you can do these things. Like, don't let the limitations get in your way. So yes, we're going to talk about a lot of shiny stuff in the couple of moments time, but don't go, oh, I don't have $200 to go buy a nice audio interface, so therefore I will not create music. Start creating music now, and then when you can afford the audio interface, it'll just make your music sound even better.
Absolutely. We've got someone in the comments here. I'm not familiar with this person, but Film, hi Film, and he says, he or she says, you probably learned quite a bit from using bad equipment, as you need to find ways to compensate. It's very, very true. It's very, very true. And I think it's a valuable lesson. And I will mention just quickly that it just occurred to me that during this week or the week before, I took a look at one of our audience members' music, that audience member being Jade Starr.
Yeah.
And I really, really enjoyed Jade's music. And what occurred to me about that was I really wasn't listening to the production of it. I mean, the production was quite good because the music was reasonably complex, I have to say. It's not really simple music. But I just really enjoyed the sound, the music itself. What I was listening to was the music. So I think, Jade's a good example. Perhaps Jade uses awesome equipment. It's going to prove me wrong.
Well, we could talk a lot about what Jade uses, but Jade is an iOS user. So Jade produces most of her music using iOS and is one of the OG. She was jailbreaking iPhones back when I was like, actually we're about the same age. So I wasn't actually that younger. But yes, part of the OG movement towards mobile creation. So I owe a lot to her and the pioneers that drove us forward and let us do what we do. But 100%. You don't listen to the quality. Well, you do listen to the quality. Quality has to be like at a passing level. Yeah. So you need to be at like a 7 or a 6 or an 8, but it's the actual song. You can have a perfectly recorded song in $1 million studio that's just a terrible song. And we've talked about this before, and it's still a terrible song. So yes, just on creating music and not so much on the gear.
Now, talking about actual gear. Now let's forget all of that because we like to shop, right? All right, I admit it. I had some new gear arrive today, and I was like, woohoo! I was enjoying myself, but there you go.
Yep.
But let's try and be honest about what you actually need. So the next step up, I guess, from that, and this is whether you're still staying on a Mac, PC, iPhone, Android, the lot, would be to move up and get yourself an audio interface. We're going to call this the level 2 tiny budget. I should
Yes.
mention, first of all, by the way, back in level 1 with no budget, use your earbuds as well. You know, you can use your earbuds that come with your phone
Always
too.
handy.
So at this stage, we don't think that with no budget, you don't have to go out and buy headphones.
Yeah.
But in level 2 here, yes, I'm going to suggest an audio interface is one thing. A cheap condenser microphone, or should you be a working musician, you may already have something like an SM58, which are very, very passable to use.
Absolutely.
And if you happen to have an SM57, if you've used it for live work at all, then that would also be useful. Can be used as a vocal mic as well. Doesn't have to be used as an instrument mic. There's one there.
Also be used as a hammer because they're that solid. Like
it's very solid.
They're hammering the nails of your studio rig if you need.
Very solid. And so I'm going to suggest some sort of microphone, obviously above the one like I was using. and also at this stage, I'm going to suggest, because we're talking about people recording audio, so recording a vocal or a guitar or any other instrument. So I'm going to suggest at this stage that you'll be wanting some enclosed headphones. Now, the reason you want a microphone is obvious. We'll get onto the audio interface in a moment, but it may not be obvious why you want enclosed headphones. Normally, you're going to be recording something like a vocal with a backing track, perhaps a click track, and you will not want the sound coming from your headphones into the microphone that you're using. And click tracks can be especially bad for this. And if you're in a quiet passage of a song, particularly, no one wants to hear that little click from the headphones. So good enclosed headphones. I guess earbuds could still be used, but
earbuds are quite good.
So we're gonna get a little bit, not silly here, but just so to give some context. To give a little bit of context, let me just change my view over here. I'm new to this, folks. Bear with me. So what we have here, I've just picked up 2 or 3 sort of interfaces that I think would be worth taking a look at. This one here, you have a Steinberg interface. You have that very one, do you? I didn't know.
UR12. It is
the UR12.
My favorite interface of all time. Yes.
Okay, so you can definitely vouch that this works with a mobile device like an iPhone.
It does indeed.
I like it. What I like about this is it's cheap. It's from a renowned brand. Who've been making audio interfaces for a very long time. If you are not recording things in stereo, so if you just got one audio source, a microphone, then you've got the one mic with the phantom power, all that stuff that you're going to need. This type of thing is a good look. And there's some others. I'm not going to waffle on about them because I'm not a salesman for any of these, but there's some others. I'm just going to quickly show you here. There's a Presonus one here that I picked out. A little 2-channel one that could last you for years, depending on what sort of music you're making. But if you're, say, a singer-songwriter, guitar, vocal, you could use something like this for a very, very long time indeed. And another one I've just pulled up there is the Scarlett. I just pulled those two up in terms of the brands. I've used both of these brands, Presonus and Focusrite, make this Scarlett Solo, and they are good, solid brands. Potentially, Focusrite even more so than Presonus, depending on who you talk to. But anyway, I've had good experiences with all of them. So this is that sort of next level up, is some sort of audio interface. I'm going to take that off the screen because it does look a little bit salesy, doesn't it? And the reason you're going to need an audio interface, perhaps I'll let you take that one, Pete.
Yeah, so as you mentioned from your experience of plugging in a $15 Alphasworks mic into your 3.5 jack on your computer, that's not going to give you a great quality sound. So you don't get a preamp, so there's no amplification that's going into your computer, and your computer is doing all the analog to digital conversion. So what you're going to get with something like this is that once you plug in your microphone or your guitar, then you can actually connect it via USB, which again, we're going basics here. So if you didn't know that, yep, you connect it up via USB, USB 2 or USB 3 for the more modern ones that we'll probably talk about in a moment. And then this becomes your sound card. So what replaces on your laptop or your desktop or your phone, which I'll talk about in a sec, this actually replaces all that. So the output becomes this and the input becomes this as well. So you plug in your headphones, your closed headphones that we'll talk about in a moment. You output to your monitor speakers if you have monitor speakers. I'm sure we'll probably talk about those as well a little bit later. And then this becomes your high quality audio interface. So yeah, if you want to level up the quality of that, you can use something like this. Again, I'm going to get salesy here because I just happen to love this, because the beauty part of the Steinberg range is that they have this selector on the back here. So you can power it by USB bus power if you're using a laptop or a desktop, or you can flick it over to 5-volt power. So you plug this into any USB battery and then you're on the go. So you're plugging into your iPhone or your iPad. You don't actually need to have AC power.
That's very cool.
Or that bus power, which is cool. And the only other thing I'll mention with that is that something like this, or the USB to Lightning cable adapter, the genuine Apple ones are what you're going to want to need if you're on an iPhone or an iPad, because this basically opens up the whole world of USB. A lot of these devices, in fact, pretty much all of them that we'll talk about, are going to be USB these days. So you need to be able to convert your USB to a Lightning if you are on mobile. But yes, we didn't pre-plan this, but no, Mike just happened to choose my favorite audio interface that I'm super passionate about, because it does everything, and I use it for pretty much everything still.
Just educate me a little bit on this, Pete, because one of the things that would happen if I was going to plug an audio interface into a PC, for example, is I would also have to install some drivers. And each company produces their own drivers, obviously, for their hardware. And normally there would also be some interface that would come with that to control that. So I know that, don't tell me there's driver installs for iOS.
There are not. So the beauty part is that most interfaces made in about the last 5 to 10 years are what's called class compliant, which means that they can run driverless. So some of them may have advanced features that you can actually install a driver, and you can run those advanced features by running it on a Mac or a PC. But anything made by Behringer, so anything from like the absolute cheap plastic UM2 that's like $40 US that a lot of folks are going to start out with, up through the Steinberg or the Focusrite, the Presonus range, all of those are class compliant, which means that you can run them in driver-free mode. And even your sort of higher end ones, they'll often have a switch there where you can go driver mode or driver-free mode. So yeah, just check for that. If you are buying an interface and you do want to use it on your Mac and PC as well as a mobile device, find out something that is class compliant is what you're looking for. But yeah, these days almost everything is. So you're going to be pretty much good to go.
And it's interesting you should bring up Behringer there, because I was about to mention one of their products. And because I did mention, get a condenser microphone.
Yes.
And just, we're talking about budget here, right? So I'm not going to suggest for a moment this Behringer C1 is the highest of quality of microphone. It's not, but it's really not bad. You can do an awful lot with this. I owned an early version of this many years ago. Used it for a few recordings, and did I notice a difference when I upgraded to other microphones? Yes, I did. But you know, if you use this well, then you know, you can get an awful lot out of it. And another one, and I think you may have owned this one, would also be in that sort of range, the Samson C01, is it that one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. I haven't used this one personally, but I know a lot of people use it as well as Behringer, and they've had good results from it. You've used this one, haven't you, Pete?
I have, yeah. This used to be my live streaming mic. So if you watched our shows, anything up until I bought this on Mike's recommendation, the AKG, not the AKG, was it Audio Technica AT20, which I think you'll probably recommend in the next level. Until I bought this, I used the Samson CO1, and I actually even own a Behringer C1U, the USB version of that one, which does a great job as well. And yeah, I have a little story about my Samson CO1. I bought it secondhand from Cash Converters. And if you're Australian, you know about Cash Converters. If you don't, think Goodwill store, but run by evil
the
corporation. Want to make money. Where people sell all their stolen goods and then you buy them at a really cheap price. So I went to Cash Converters, and there was a great microphone. It was in a kit with some headphones, and I've still got the headphones and the microphone. I brought it home. I set it up. I'm recording it. It's got great sound. I'm like, this is really great. And then I'm going in there, and I start singing, and I start smelling. And I'm like, this microphone smells like an ashtray. And my one piece of advice: if you're buying secondhand gear, don't just pick it up, listen to it, touch it, feel it, and look at it. Smell it, because yes, you are going to find that you're going to get yourself some smelly secondhand gear, and that is a great microphone, but it still smells like a smoker at the end of a very long night out. Whatever.
There you go. All right. So wise words from somebody who's been burnt there.
Been burnt, indeed.
So the other one, I know I mentioned this earlier, but just to sort of drive the message home a little bit, is do give this one a try, the old SM58, if you've got this kicking around, if you are a working musician. So just a quick explanation here. The SM58 is a dynamic microphone. And I'll try and put this in as simple terms as I can. Really a nice quality microphone, but in comparison to a condenser microphone or a large diaphragmed condenser microphone, it doesn't have the same frequency response, and it's not quite as sensitive. So it's not ideal in a recording studio situation, but really not bad at all. And I did see the other day that there's a very famous person uses this in the studio as their microphone of choice, and I sort of understand why, and that is Bono from U2.
Yeah.
He's using this, and I think that's probably because he's got a very, very powerful voice, and you can really yell into these things. They don't distort. The microphone itself doesn't distort. Okay, so so that's maybe a reason. So there's a little endorsement from U2 there for that one.
There
and
you
the other
go.
one I mentioned
Feel
is
like
the and the SM57, which I believe is actually virtually the same
it's the same
microphone.
capsule, isn't it? It's just
The same
filter
capsule.
on the top.
I've never tested them to see if they are.
I just trust people that know more than I do that they're the same capsule.
Right. And I think another good point as well that Vachi's making here is the SM58 is great for noisy rooms. So if you've got some sort of background noise going on, this is a good point actually, Vachi, as well, because here in Australia we have these cavernous big houses, etc. But some people live in noisy cities, in apartment blocks, which are very noisy. There's fire engines going past, there's trains going past, that kind of thing. So a dynamic microphone may be a good choice if you experience that kind of thing. Maybe it's your kids always in the background, what have you. So, yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, very good for that.
Agree.
So I think we move on to the we better move on to level 3.
I know we're level 3 and we're 27 minutes in. Let's kick it on.
Well, that's okay, because we're not going to talk much about the high end stuff.
Exactly.
So, this is not really a true level. This is just level 2 plus one thing.
Yeah.
And I've put in there a MIDI controller keyboard. So now we're getting a bit beyond just your vocals and what have you. You're probably going to want to make use of virtual instruments at this stage. There you go. He's holding one in his very hand there. So for those of you who don't know, this is not something that makes sound in itself. It's not a synthesizer or an electric piano. It simply is a keyboard, and it will send signals to another MIDI instrument. In this case, your computer is a MIDI instrument. And it will say, play this key, play that key, stop playing that key, play it this loud, add modulation, add pitch bend. It's just going to basically instruct your DAW, whatever that is, to play notes when and how to play them. So that's a very basic explanation, but that's what that is going to do, that controller keyboard. And I've had times when I haven't had a controller keyboard available. And you're basically putting things in step time, usually in step time. And doing it with, say, something like drums is okay-ish, right? But piano parts, no, just really, you're not going to enjoy that at all. You're probably going to give up and say, yeah, recording isn't for me. It's just too hard work to do that. And that's not to say I never did it. Many years ago, way back on my Amiga, I think my Commodore Amiga, I had some sort of like loopy kind of step step programming thing and used to put in everything one note at a time.
Yeah.
That was great fun. I remember it with such joy. That's sarcasm, folks, for those of you who don't.
Yes.
We've got
I
any
like sarcasm.
Americans? They don't
No.
know that.
No,
That's a bit racist, wasn't it?
I would be remiss not to mention the fact that this is, I think, where your mobile devices do kind of come into their own a little bit, because when you're starting out, having a touchscreen device as opposed to having a typing keyboard or no touch device at all actually can help you out a little bit. So I'm not saying you're going to be playing like you would on an 88 key piano, like a full on two-handed piano piece. But if you are trying to put in a melody and you want a little bit of a swing feel, or you want a little bit of that human touch, being able to actually touch it in on your touch screen is pretty cool. And even on your Mac and PC, you can use your typing keyboard. So a lot of DAWs will actually let you use your typing keyboard to actually punch it in. Now, you're not going to get velocity, modulation, sustain, any of that sort of caper. But if you just want to punch it in and get the timing, like you say, just programming in a step sequence is fine for EDM music, for loop-based music, for some of those sort of things. But if you're actually trying to get some feel into your music, you need some sort of way to get your digits actually pressing stuff to get it into your DAW.
Okay, that's sort of. I might disagree with you a little bit there. Can I do that? Is that allowed?
Well, actually, we're on your channel, so yeah, you can.
No, I think I was showing in one of my videos the other day in Cakewalk, in fact, the little keyboard that you can pop up and use your computer keyboard as a keyboard. I must admit, I hadn't used it before, but for the sake of a complete tutorial, I wanted to point people towards it. And when I tried it out, I found it actually really quite useful. I thought, oh, that's actually quite good. Very, very useful. So I think there are maybe some similar features in DAWs. Look, I've just got to pop this one up.
Yes.
Mimo Japan, bars and pipes. Do you know what bars and pipes is, Pete?
I have no idea what bars and pipes is.
That was what I was talking about. That was on the Amiga computer, a MIDI sequencer.
Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful. Many hours on bars and pipes I did, Mimo. Very, very good fun.
I was on the DOS PC back in those days. So for mine, it was Fast Tracker and then Screen Tracker 3.
Look, you can just see the interface just up here.
Oh,
bars and pipes.
Very similar sequencing software that was early, and even the Commodore 64 had like remnants of that, where you had like two tones. What does that have? Like three voices, three monophonic voices that you could actually sequence. It was like,
wonderful day.
Wonderful. Cut it in and out to get some like percussion sounds. Yeah, we're showing our age here, mate. It's not.
It was awesome. It was great fun. Definitely. A MIDI controller keyboard. I've got a couple that I wanted to mention that I've had some variations on this. Look, these are not always the cheapest ones, the Novation ones. I've had a couple of Novation products. This is a tiny 25 key keyboard, which for me, for certain types of music, might be okay. If you're just putting in drum patterns and things like that. But I have found that this brand Novation, the actual quality of the hardware, I do enjoy. I think it's quite good. And I think I might have spied this behind you, an older version of this, but I've had one of these as well before. And this is M Audio's Key Station. Yes, you've got the old silver version, which I used to have as well. And they're perfectly fine. Not the highest quality keyboards in the world, but they are velocity sensitive, which is something you're going to want. And a reasonable piece of kit. They just plug in and they work very, very nicely. And the reason I've just pulled that one up is because I sort of think that 61 keys is much more practical. You can do a lot more with those 61 keys. When you're on those 25 key keyboards, you're forever moving the octaves up and down so that you can get to lower and higher notes. But can be useful in some cases. For me, I eventually ditched all my 25 key keyboards because I get rid of gear when I don't use it anymore. I don't like to.
I need to start doing that. I need you to teach me how to Gumtree stuff. But whenever people ask me about MIDI keyboards, I'm like 25 key if you're doing simple melodies. So if you're just programming melodies where you're playing around in 1 or 2 octaves, 49 keys is a minimum if you want any sort of harmony. So anytime you're playing chords, I think you need 49 keys, because if you're moving around and doing chords that go across a whole octave, like you say, you're going to run out of space. And then go to 61 or 88 if you're an actual keyboard or piano player. You're going to get super frustrated if you can't hit your low C's and be able to do your octaves on your left hand. So definitely factor in the type of music you're creating with the number of keys you have. And I was saying before that Vachi pointed out that home studio corner, yes, Joe Gilder. I'm looking more and more like Joe Gilder every day as I lose more hair and grow my beard. So,
if you want to feel good about your channel, Pete, if you want to feel good about your channel, go and watch some of Joe's really early videos, some of his first videos. He had a lot more hair then.
he did, I know. As did I. I'm basically following Joe. I'm like, I'm 5 years behind Joe, and I'm just doing it. So, which is hopefully a good sign, because if in 5 years' time I have 100,000 subscribers and have the success that he has, then hey, I'm doing something right.
Absolutely. So, look, me and Pete are both big Joe Gilder fans. I really appreciate his style and his knowledge and the way that he imparts it very much. And if you also in the audience there find yourself being a Joe Gilder fan, then invite him on our show. Go to one of his videos and say, hey, could you go on Mike and Pete's show? And we'd love to have him on.
And then I can really creep him out and go all single white female on him and say, see, look, I'm trying to look like you. I'm trying to be you, Joe.
Oh, dearie me. Right. Okay.
It's getting late.
Now, next level. Enough Joe love here.
Level up.
By the way, I noticed Rick Beato has gone over 1 million subscribers today. Just chucking that one in there. Congratulations to Rick. Not that he's ever going to watch this, but congrats to him anyway. So the next level up, I'm going to say, is called what I call a mod. Thank you, Edward. He's on it. He's going over to Joe and asking him. Level 4 is a modest budget. This is all of the things above. But what I'm suggesting at this stage is a couple things are going to happen. You've got your keyboard, you've got your little interface, and you've decided that this is for you, right? You're going to spend a little bit of money. I'm going to say monitor speakers here. I'm going to say some mid-level monitor speakers. I say that very specifically. I haven't got any products in particular to show you, but look, in my personal opinion, and shoot me in the comments down below if you want to, but I don't think you should bother with cheap low-end monitor speakers. They're just you may as well use some stereo speakers. Did I say that? They're just I just don't think they're going to help you very much. I've done it, been down that route years ago. They didn't really help me that much for my mixes. You might be better off to use good headphones than use rubbish monitor speakers. That's my opinion. I'd like to hear what Vachi's got to say about that.
I'd like to hear what Vachi and anyone else has to say, because I agree with you. I think if you've got $100, buy a pair of these Sennheiser HD 280s instead of buying $100 pair of monitor speakers, because you're not going to get any value out of cheap monitors.
Absolutely. Now, some people might spy in my videos that I've got some Rocket 8, some KRK 8-inch speakers. If I were to do it all again, if I had my time again, I might not bother with 8-inch speakers. That might be a bit overkill, especially in a small room. I know you've got some like 5-inch.
I got
5 or 6 inch.
In fact,
you got 4.
I've got Rocket 4s, which are about right for this room. I mean, I've got a small room here, so they do okay. I would probably go slightly the other way, so I would probably land around the Rocket 5s. I think they would probably be a good thing for most mid-sized rooms and most folks. And you don't have to buy KRK, but they just seem to be the best bang for buck that a lot of people use. And cool looking yellow cones, so you can't really go wrong.
And also, you know, the Yamaha speakers, you sort of, I think HS7s, those types of things. They're a reasonable amount more money, but they're not. You know, this is save up stuff. We're talking here. You're going to, save up a bit of money and plant some money in something. There's some debate on them. I probably, on balance, I'm going to suggest that the Yamaha ones are better, but not by more than about 5% in my opinion. When I haven't had them at home and compared them, which is really where you should do it, but certainly in the shop that I've compared them. That's my personal opinion, but that doesn't mean it's correct or that somebody else won't have another preference.
You mentioned shops there too, by the way, Mike. And I must say that I bought monitor speakers online, but I would probably, again, in hindsight, they're probably the one thing that I would not buy online, sight unseen or sound unheard, as you may say, because you probably do want to listen to them. Take in some music that you're working on, take it, annoy your local music shop person. Hey, they've got nothing better to do. They're a failed musician, so they want someone to talk to music about. So go in and play music and listen to all the monitor speakers and see what works for you.
Yeah. And let's just quickly say here that for those of you who are watching this and don't know why you're buying monitor speakers at all, regular speakers that you use, for your home stereo or what have you, or even your computer speakers, are designed to color the sound. They do their best to make the sound as good as possible. They're balanced in a certain way. That's not really a good thing, because you might think it sounds awesome and then it gets played on another system and it doesn't sound awesome. So the idea behind monitor speakers is that they just, I'm not saying they don't color the sound, but to as little as possible, they are just supposed to be what you would call honest. So they're giving you a true representation of what's really going on in your mix. Still, things are going to sound different on every single system. This is so it's a bit easier for you to spot errors in your mix. As a whole other subject, I just want to pull up a couple of comments. Vachi is suggesting that you should spend at least $300 a pair for monitor speakers. I haven't tried them in that price range, to honestly say myself, so I'll take Vachi's word for that, and it's a very good word. And I'll just want to bring up Mimo again, because I know that Mimo lives in Japan and lives in very small spaces. So I haven't actually heard of these ones, iLoud micro monitors.
Yep.
I don't know, but they sound small. They can fit into his 1 square meter studio. So awesome. And sometimes, needs must, your specific situation, your budget, your specific situation can sometimes dictate that you need to make compromises in some way. Now, moving on to the things I want to impress upon people, this is really the stage where I would recommend that this is where you've decided you're really going to continue with this, right? Don't go and waste a whole bunch of money, or do it if you want. But my advice is don't do that just before you even start recording anything, right? Get used to recording before you decide what gear you need. But this next level up is where we start to, we're still on this level. It's another part of this level, and that is to upgrade those microphones a little. So we talked earlier on about some cheap microphones. The biggest difference I noticed when I went from some of the things like the Behringer microphones, and I think I did buy a Rode NT1A many years ago, was the noise. The actual signal noise was, I mean, the Rodes are particularly transparent, but that was one thing I noticed right away. There's more subtleties in it, I would say, to someone who's really listening carefully, particularly for very organic sounds like vocals, acoustic guitars, things like that. So I'm going to quickly chuck up. There's no surprises for guessing. There's no surprises for guessing what I'm going to chuck up here. Let's flick through. Not that one, actually. This one is Rode NT1A. There's some people really hate this microphone because they find it a little bit top endy, a little bit harsh in the higher end. I can see what they mean. Very much depends on which vocalist is singing through it as well. So there would be something. I mean, it's a very well-known microphone. You usually get it in a kit like this with a pop filter and all that. If I just had to say you're going to buy something without trying it, then go. This is what I'm going to say to people. But I did flick through this little baby here. Very, very well priced microphone. I don't even think the one I've got on the screen is the cheapest one you could find. I know you picked, as you say, you picked this up on my recommendation recently. And that was really because I'd made a video where I did a blind test with 3 mics, the NT1A, this one, and an SE Electronics one, because they were the ones I had handy at the time. And I thought it was interesting. This is quite a big difference in price from the other 2 microphones I had, and it actually came out as the top pick on a blind test. Right, so it's interesting. I mean, In my opinion, it still is a preference thing. You're going to go for the one that you prefer the sound of, but I would say don't look past this little baby here.
Yeah, the reason why many people use it all over the world and you see it so often, it's like the XLR version of the Blue Yeti that you see is the USB version because
Yep.
yeah, everyone uses it because it's $100, it's awesome, and it's worth it to get a good quality sound. And it's just that
And I'm going to say, and this is not to knock Behringer or Samson at all, but there is, for me, there's a noticeable difference between those microphones and this one. The other one I'm just going to chuck up there, I think, very quickly is this one here. The only reason I really mention this, this one, it's not my favorite microphone. It is very reasonably priced, but it happens to be the one that I'm talking through right now. I thought, well, mine's an older one. It's a blue one. They all come in black now because I think black is more of a trendy color than the metallic blue. Not a bad microphone. Not nothing I'm going to say. I can't really say it's better than the AT2020, but it's fine microphone, and also in that kind of price range, a little bit cheaper there actually. So that might be where you'd start to upgrade, and where I would suggest that you think about it, because I'm sure Vachi is going to agree with this. Is wherever you can improve the source of the sound, that being the microphone, that's where you should start. That's the beginning of your sort of signal chain. So that's where it all begins, you know. So that's when you really start to say, I've been doing this recording for a while, you know, I've really got into some techniques, I'm getting to some good results, but I just want to notch the quality up that tiny bit more. Then microphones is a big area to look at. That is assuming you're not just recording electronic music.
Very true.
Anything to add in there, Mr. Johns?
No,
we're running out of time.
We are running over time, but that's okay. No, I agree with that, and I think yes. Again, Joe Gilder, Home Studio Corner. We sound like absolute fanboys today, but he says get it right at the source, and I think that's the best advice for anything. Is that the better you can get your performance recorded, and that's your playing, your miking technique, the quality of the microphone you're using, the quality of your signal path into your recording interface. Doesn't have to be thousands of dollars worth, but just get what's going to work for you, and then make sure you get the best possible sound going in.
And even before that, and some cheap things, I guess. I mean, this is not so much. This is a little bit on technique, but in terms of purchases, change the strings on your guitar will make a massive difference to the sound. You may not like the changes it makes, but it will make a massive change to the sound. So definitely, you know, look after your voice. Make sure you've had a good night's rest the night before you record, so that your voice is in good condition. Go easy on the drinking and smoking, maybe, things like that. It could be all kinds of things like that, you know, before you even get to the stage of buying Neumann microphones and what have you. So look, we have run over time by quite a bit, so I'm just going to quickly let people know what was in the rest of the list ever so quickly. I'm not going to spend any time at all. Level 5 was about moving up to some room treatment, looking at the room you're recording in, spending a little bit of money on that. Then looking at more specific mics, some mics specifically for instruments types, not just a general sort of microphone. Then upgrading your interface. Now, you may want to upgrade your interface earlier if you're recording, say, a band. If you're in a band and you're recording a lot of people, you may want to upgrade to, normally you're going to go from 2 right up to like 8, or maybe there's some, I think Behringer makes a 4 input one, but yeah. So you're going to be looking at doing that. The next one, level 6. I've called this level run an old car and skip some meals level. These are completely unnecessary nice to have. Things like I've got on my desk right in front of me here, a MIDI controller will improve workflow potentially, but doesn't improve the sound whatsoever. Things like synthesizers, multiple synthesizers. If that's your core music, then that might be much earlier in the list. Upgrading your PC, like I've done a video recently, Super P, you know, spend lots of money on your PC to make sure that can handle those, and those are virtual instruments and lots of plugins, all that kind of thing. And last, level 7, I've called this I've lost my mind level, and that is just one item, add some RGB lighting.
You know how much I love when people just spend all the time in their studio going, look how cool it looks with these lights. And
I've chosen blue today.
You've gone with blue? Yes.
Lots of colours.
I saw that in the show notes, and I'm just like, I'm gonna have to bite my tongue there because I know plenty of people. And I've made enemies. I've literally made enemies online because I've had to go at people for like I've made comments along the lines of, "There, that's a very pretty looking studio with all those lights. How about you actually record some music in it, sunshine?" And people don't tend to like that. They're like, "No, I don't want to ruin my studio by plugging in cables and making it not look pristine." Anyway,
However, on a more serious note, I'm not suggesting RGB lighting. Some people might just have some traditional lamps and things around. You can actually really improve your mood with lighting. That's just in life in general. Have good lighting around you, which if lighting affects your mood. But I'm not saying RGB doesn't have to move, but there are things that you can have in your studio. I don't have this, but I must do it. And I'll tell you, this is a nice little tip. Get a plant or two in your studio, a live plant, not a fake one. It can be really good for your mood to see that sort of thing. It can be really, to oxygenate your room, all that shit. I don't know if I believe that, but apparently it does. Some things that you're going to get to that you're going to spend on your studio do not directly improve the sound at all.
Yeah.
But they may help your workflow, or they may help your mood, your desire to get stuck in and do it. So that's the only defense I've got from it.
Yes, sadly, I'm very tongue in cheek, and I know, as you said, I need to be careful because the whole sarcasm that we have here in Australia, people get lost on that, and they're like, "Did you see that guy that was having a go at everyone for having the LED lights in the studio?" I'm like, "No, I'm just having a bit of a laugh." Anyway, but yes, so I agree with that. And in fact, when I'm trying to record and I'm getting all lost in myself and my studio's a mess, I get the vacuum and I get the duster and I put everything away, and then I make my studio look pristine, and then I start recording, and the quality of my recording goes from absolute shite to actually about 10 levels better, just because I've got a clean open space around me and I'm not surrounded by cables and gear. So
whatever you got to do. Some people have to, have hardship in their life to write good music. Not me. I can write music with not a hard life. Thank you. Just going to flick through some of the comments here. Of course. So Vachi has said there that he doesn't have to buy it. He needs to get RGB lights so he can move up to level 7. It's true. And as I had up there a moment ago, Jade was saying that her studio is on a plank held up by a cardboard box. Awesome. And I definitely think that Phil's got a sell a Neve console. Who needs a Neve console? Get a plugin that emulates your Neve console. What plugin can emulate RGB lights? I ask you that.
Yes. And can I just say, we've been talking about gear a lot. Can I just say that how lucky we are to live in the future, and that we don't have to worry about things like aligning tape machines and console channels going dead just out of nowhere, and getting the technician in to fix things. Like, we are super lucky. Like, even the old 4-track days where you'd have your cassette tapes and you'd have to go down to the store to buy your chrome tapes because that was all that your 4-track machine would take, and you'd run out of space because you had to run it at double speed. And
I'll tell you what, this is I understand people loving old gear. This show's going on, folks, so I'm trying to say goodbye, but Pete's just hanging us in there. I understand people buying old gear, right? Like some old gear was not worth much, say 15 years ago, because it was like, now it's got value, right? But say old compressors, some things like that, I get it, old consoles even, they've got a certain sound to them. But I've noticed recently the secondhand value of Tascam Fostex 4-track cassette things is like, I see them like $500 or $600. Honestly, man, I wouldn't give you $5 for them. But because I hated those things. There was so much hiss on those. I mean, they had to run them at a high speed to get the hiss at a higher frequency. So you weren't so aware of it. They were awful. Young folks in the audience, don't daydream that this was the golden age of recording. It wasn't. 4 tracks was not enough for a start. We had to bounce over all the time.
When you got that third bounce from your tape, like think of what the quality of a tape was, and then think about a tape recording a tape recording a tape. And once you're on that third bounce, you could barely hear the first track. It was just like in the background. It was
the quality was unbearable. Give me a little bit of a little bit of noise from you may have got from the sort of a 24 track tape. What were they, about 2 inches or something? Fine, But
Yep.
yeah, so I really don't understand that. Perhaps someone can enlighten me about some thing.
So you've made enemies now. The old
have.
tape guys are coming after you, and the RGB lighting guys are coming after me. So we've probably made more enemies
They
than
can keep
friends in this video.
See, even though I've got a turntable, I play some vinyl. Right. I mean, I know the downfalls of it, the crackles, the pops, and all that, but I love it. I really do appreciate the sound of it, but I can't go there with cassette, let alone 4-track cassette. Anyway, that's the end of the show. We've now
Yeah.
dissed 4 tracks and their owners for their poor choices in life. Thank you so much to everyone who has been taking part in there. Sorry I didn't get to quite all of you there, but really enjoy you guys coming in and taking part. We will be on Pete's channel this time next week.
Yes.
For his yet undecided topic, Pete, is it, or have you got some ideas?
I think the topic will be Australia are leading the Test series 2-0. That's what the entire topic will be for next week's show.
Yes. Do you think they will be by then? Anyway,
depends if it's raining in England. Anyway, we're getting off track again. But yes, we will be back next week to talk about something music or cricket related, one of the two.
Yes, indeed. All right. Lots of people in the comments like, what's cricket? Is it like baseball? They're saying no.
Very long, slightly more boring baseball, which is barely possible because baseball's the most boring game. Sorry, we're putting the baseball people off now. I think you should finish off, Mike. I'm not stopping talking.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much. Thank you very much to everyone in the comments, and we will see you next Thursday. Bye.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. A trumpet.